We're here today with Kacy Cole. Kacy is someone we recently got to know. She's quite a talented person. She's the CMO of Holland America Cruise Lines. They're based in Seattle, Washington, but they cruise the world.
Thank you so much. It's a privilege to be here.
Kacy, tell us, what is your job involved at Holland America? It's got to be such a unique industry unto itself. All of these little, not so little industries, and they have a unique vocabulary and a subculture. When I think about it, you have in Holland America, I've come to learn that you operate 11 beautiful ships,
Mhm.
500 sailings a year, which would lead me to believe that you probably have 500 dockings a year too. We want to keep those in balance. But can you imagine that's 500 different ports of call, vendors bringing provisions to the ships, people getting on and off, traveling to and from, the amount of on-land staff, the amount of staff on the ships, entertainment. It's a community industry now unto itself. You've only been at it for a couple of years, but got to be learning a whole new industry.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is definitely the most complex business I've ever worked in. I say I'm a builder, I'm not a farmer. So, if someone really wants to optimize email from 1.2 to 1.1%, I'm not your gal. But if you want to grow teams, brands, businesses, and scale, that's what I really love to do. So for me, I've worked across 5 or 6 different industries, but cruising is the one I think is the most passionate and also the most complex. So I'm going to add some other additional complexity to what you just shared, which is when you make a booking, for example, that's one way. You also have to book your drink packages and your shore excursions. And then you also have your whole onboard experience. So from a marketing standpoint, we're really looking at curating that whole journey of a guest through that experience and how we support them, whether it's through a travel agent or through our own website or with the onboard crew and staff. And so it's really a really complex business, but one that's really exciting, and it really taps into, people's lifestyle and how they like to live.
How many people work all in for Holland America?
Oh my gosh, thousands. So Holland is actually part of Carnival Cruise Line, which is
Yes.
9, 8, 9. I can't remember the exact number of cruise lines. So for us, we're in the thousands. And while we have a small and mighty team shoreside, it's really our crew and the folks who are on board each ship who really make that experience special for guests.
You figure 11 ships, that must be a crew of a few hundred per boat?
Yes, actually, I think more than that. I think we're closer to the 1,000 mark.
Wow. Wow. And of course, they have to have days off and time off and rotate leave and not. It's just, wow, very, very complex. But you said this is not your first industry, even though you're only 14 years old. You've worked other places, obviously legally. But tell us what other kinds of things you've done in your career. Where are you from originally?
Yeah, I'm originally from Texas, but I've lived in about 20 cities through my family moving or me moving for jobs, including overseas. I graduated from the American University of Paris, which was the best thing I think that ever happened to me from a personal and professional standpoint. I was very much off the turnip truck, and I really got thrown into the deep end of learning language and cultures and really understanding that there's more than, my small world out there.
You're a pretty daring young lady.
Yes, I do have to say I'm less risk averse than most folks, but I really love that part of my job. I like complexity. I like problem solving. So
Did you speak the language before you went to American
no,
University
I
in
did
Paris?
not. I did not. And
Wow.
fortunately, the American University, almost all the classes are in English. You can pick some in different languages, but it really exposed me not only to the French culture, but my friends were from all over the world. So I was able to learn from a lot of my friends are Norwegian, and I had Lebanese friends, and it was so fun. And it really pushed me outside my comfort zone, which I'm a big believer that's where growth comes from. So I've really been leaning into experiences that challenge the way I think and help me think differently, I think, than most people, and really embracing that growth that comes with those experiences.
Wow, that's a great adventure. And then, so what other kinds of things have you done career-wise?
Yeah, so I actually started in publishing when I was in Paris. I worked for, you may know this, I'm going to date myself, with the International Herald Tribune newspaper that used to be based headquartered out of Paris. And After I did a few years there, I went to work for Hearst Magazines International and really
Was
leaned
David
into.
Ignatius there when you were there?
Yes, actually, very much. Oh, I love that. I love when I make a connection for the past. Yes, it was a wonderful experience, and Hearst was just exploding at the time. And I worked in the international division for the magazines, and went back to business school. So I like to say I'm an art historian who's gone bad, and got my MBA and came out of that. And at the time, this is the .com days, also dating myself, where it was considered a publishing vehicle, right? So you were really doing if you remember booking URLs and you were spent a lot of time writing one paragraph for Coca-Cola.com because that's really all it was at the time. And so I really came up the digital side. So I came up as first building websites and really doing business strategy into the digital marketing side and found myself about 12 years ago in retail, where really I started getting a lot more brand experience. And so I found myself at Tommy Bahama, who had just launched their website and really spent the next 4 years there growing the business with that leadership team and bringing brand and really performance or digital marketing together.
Tommy Bahama is a great example of really clever brand creation and imagery, that how the name lends itself to think about a lifestyle. And I think the people who've been involved there, I don't know them, but I think they've just been very, very clever about managing that brand and creating value each step of the way.
I agree. And they really, I think I joined at a time where, again, the website was growing, they were expanding restaurant, had that whole lifestyle concept. And I think what they did a great job of was maintaining their core guests, but opening their arms to new segments and growth opportunity. And so pivoting from being vacation wear, where people used to wear a suit every day to work. So the clothing was like, oh, I finally get out of my suit, to a place today where we're much more casual. So how do they make that more relevant? So it was really about the brand proposition really evolved to be inspiring relaxation. And so how do you feel relaxed in your clothes, whether you're at work or at home or on vacation? And I think it was super smart.
We have a home on the west coast of Florida. When we see a house being torn down, we refer to it as, well, there goes there's going to be built a new Tommy Bahama mansion.
Yes, they did a lot of expansion and it really grew the brand. I mean, I think they doubled their business over those 5 years, really growth in direct while still maintaining those indirect relationships. And I think it's a
And
really great
they managed
example.
to enhance the brand with the restaurants, which was,
Very much.
not a slam dunk for sure.
Yeah, it was actually the restaurants were a great entry point to the brand. Imagine if you're curious about what Tommy Bahama's like, you can actually, go in, have a dish, have lunch, have dinner, and get a feel for who we are. And that made for they have a lot of restaurants they called islands where the restaurants and retail stores together. So it's a great brand entry point where that traffic then would flow into the retail and people could really engage and go deeper into the brand.
We have one near us in Naples, Florida, and that's where the store and the restaurant are approximately next door to one another, and it really does work there.
Very much so. And it's a great example again where you can reach broader audience and bring them into your proposition and what you're really about without having to jump headfirst into the brand experience.
Kacy, what attracted you to Holland America?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I'm the builder, and this was clearly, I've done digital transformation now 5 times. So I kind of came through retail the last 10 years where omni-channel was going. And so I was working for a great company out of Texas that's called LTK, which is really the influencer platform and where that's becoming such a huge impact on consumer brands. And this opportunity came up for me with Holland America Line. And I was very curious for 2 reasons. One is it had that transformation element to it, but it's more than just the digital transformation. This is a 150-year-old brand with
I remember when they
incredible history.
started in the Netherlands. I was a small child at the time, but I remember 150 years ago.
Yeah. Well, you don't look it, I have to say. But
I
it
don't look
really
more than 130. Come on.
well, it's really I mean, I really am so careful about how I think about the brand, but it was really a neat brand. I call it evolution versus revolution. So it does need transformation, but it may not be a hard right in the brand. It's really about how do we bring the brand along where we again keep core guests, but invite more people to join and open our arms to a broader audience and really tweak the way in which we not just go to market, but how we think about the experience. And so that for me as a transformation gal was really exciting to think about how we would really rethink things. And it has been incredible. I would say candidly, the other big piece for me was the leadership on the team is just spectacular, both my peers and who I work for. And, you get to a point in your career where who you work with and who you work for is equally as important as what you're doing. And this was the perfect storm moment for me.
With 9 different brands and a carnival portfolio,
Mhm.
tell us about how you like, and you and your team, the team you work with, like to position Holland America Line toward a particular, what brand imagery do you have? Do you want for that? What kind of a customer does that attract? And how
Mm.
to evolve it to appeal to other people with different kinds of curation of experiences that you're very much into, which is how we got connected.
Yeah. So I think the first thing is, I mean, the thing that makes Holland different from everyone else in our at least sister brands is that we really everything we do is in service to the guest. So our crew has a really unique um way in which they serve the guest. And it's not traditional butler service if you think about it. It's very personal and genuine. So they look at how you like your shades in the room. They remember your drink from the night before. It's very personable. And so that has been what our guests keep coming back for. So how do we deliver at that level of authenticity and articulate that to our guests consistently? I think on the other side of that, it is, how do we continue to grow and evolve and be our own entity? So we are working on really this, how we go to market around that service and bringing that to life. And I think we're really excited to make it very regionalized. So how we go to market, for example, in Europe is going to be very different from how we bring the brand to life in Caribbean or how we bring to life in Alaska, which is really our flagship product. And so I think for us, we are trying to lean more into a lifestyle. And what we're excited about is really attracting more than just our core guests. We have a lot of guests who are retired and who take longer cruises, and we are beefing up how we go to market with that. So for example, launching legendary cruises, which really harken back to a bit of our history, as well as differentiation for going to new places. Like we do one where it's the Coral Triangle in the South Seas, or circumnavigating Japan, and we call the Majestic Japan. So places people have as bucket list experiences. So that's for our core guests, but our new guest is really around Alaska in particular. So our average age is in the 40s, and they have people who are new to brand who join us for Alaska, again, our flagship product. And they often have children, teenagers, or multi-generational families. And that's a big growth area for us. And I think that I call it the melting pot moment where, we really are becoming a lifestyle, so that when you're sitting around the pool and you see someone who's 70 and someone who's 20 something, you're not like, what's a 70-year-old doing there? Or what's the 20-year-old doing there? They're really gravitating towards that service proposition and experience for the brand that we can deliver. That is, I don't want to say demographics are dead, but that's a lot of where marketing is going, is bringing that, brand and performance together where you connect regardless of your age or regardless of, your income and things like that. It's really about what your behaviors and attributes you have in common. And that's really how we're thinking about it.
My wife and I have been on a cruise, we had a wonderful time, but we haven't done a lot of it. And tell us about your customers, your community members. How many of them are first? If we would go on a cruise to Alaska on Holland America Line, how many people will we meet who have done this many times?
Once you become a loyal guest, you are actively cruising with us usually once a year or more. So we definitely
Oh,
have a very engaged guest once that you convert. We over index in new to cruise or new to brand because of Alaska. So Alaska is often your entry point to the brand. And so people will come on board, experience it if they want to cruise again. So they will typically pick us after that. If they are not necessarily a cruiser, they may want to cross off other bucket list items. So one of the things we've been doing from the marketing front is if you cruise Alaska and you haven't cruised with us, places like Panama Canal, Iceland, Norway, places where you can really reach by cruise and have that experience really resonates to them. The people who connect to that brand will cruise with us again.
So I have to ask you right away, what's going on with the Panama Canal?
Well, I can't really speak to that, but we're
Do you have to
continuing
bring
to
your
push
own bucket of
ahead.
water?
Well said. Well said.
Is that caused interference with your cruises there to the Panama Canal?
Not yet. No, not for us. I think, when things shift around the world, like I mean, that's what you were talking about earlier. We have an incredible team who really makes magic happen. So when one port closes, we adjust to another. We move the fleets all around the world. So for us, it's really about trying to accommodate the guest and then still meet where we run into some of those geography challenges.
So how's the popularity of that Red Sea cruise right now?
Yeah, good point. We're definitely more Mediterranean than Red Sea, of course,
My
but
my point would be
we're
though,
here.
when there's news in the world,
Mhm.
as the CMO of Holland America, you're sensitive to every big
Very much so.
global story because it's going to impact you somewhere.
Yeah, it is absolutely. It's a team effort on the commercial side where we look at what guest behaviors are, where that's changing, where that's adapting, and then how we can best meet them. So it's not just servicing them in this moment, which we do with an incredible contact center and our sales folks and our agents that we keep very close to us as part of that community. But it's also where can we give guests if they want to continue a similar experience or something just as great. And it's a tremendous amount of logistics to migrate people from all the different locations and the ships. And that's what makes, honestly, I think the brand so incredible is people will go above and beyond to make sure that we deliver to the very high expectations that our guests have.
Kacy, as the CMO, how do you think about uh, that that family that cruises with you once a year, that family that just said, "I'm going to try our first cruise." Our kids are independent enough now that they won't they'll enjoy the cruise. They're old enough they'll enjoy the cruise,
Hmm.
Alaska cruise. Do you think deliberately about how you create community, how you communicate with them differently, how you try and create a sense of community and a constant interaction with your brand with those discrete different types of cruises?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing I would say is that what we really try to do is besides getting those new folks on board, we have our brand is kind of unique in that if you think about CPG products, it's often passed down from parent to child, right? Like your mom uses Tide, the child uses Tide. We have a lot of that, which makes our brand super unique. And we get this feedback all the time from travel
So
agents.
how many times have you heard, "Oh, we're the third or fourth generation to cruise on Holland America"?
Definitely second and third. Haven't heard fourth yet, but I'm open to that happening for sure. And it actually a lot
150
of
years, you
my
got to have some.
absolutely, absolutely. We have a lot of the multi-generational is a huge area of our business where parents teach their kids now bring their kids. And I have several friends whose parents grew up in Holland America who actually cruise now with their children. And I think that's what makes us so unique and exciting. And so we really think about how do we create, again, experiences for those folks and bring them back and back. And so I think we have a lot of that. And the other part for the new people is we are leaning into partnerships and how do we start to also create a sense of community where when you're not on board, when you're on the ship, what are you doing shoreside that we continue to engage you? And I think that's a lot of where the marketing is going to start leaning into is how do we develop, for example, these partnerships where we can create connections and consistently communicate that plugs into their lifestyle as well versus feeling more like marketing.
Well, I think that makes so much sense because if they're going to cruise with you once a year, how do you get a sense,
Mhm.
how do you distill in those people by your behaviors, a sense that you want to have a dialogue with them, not just when they're cruising and not just when they're getting ready, but
Mhm.
on a year-round basis, that you want to be a part of their lives?
Very much so. And I think that's a result of a lot of the deep research we've done on the guest and understanding, through some third party data about what they do when they're not on board. So we have a really good idea of what they do with us and on board, but what happens when they're shoreside for the year. And so understanding where they shop, what they're buying, where they are in life. Does it include kids? Does it not? So really starting to get a deep and rich understanding of our guest and those insights has really informed how we want to go to market and keep that conversation going between cruises.
If you have a market where you have a high concentration of Holland America people, let's say it's Philadelphia, would you do an event in Philadelphia once in a while that would invite those people to come together and make them feel connected
Absolutely.
to the family?
Mhm. That, and we also think about, we have like, I'll use Seattle is probably a really great example. We call them home ports, right? So where we spend a lot of Seattle is obviously like our headquarter for Holland in the US, but it's also a big home port. So we're looking at how do we become a hometown hero just as every other brand in Seattle. So we just sponsored the University of Washington Huskies this year, well, last year and then into this year, which couldn't have been better
Good
timing for
idea.
us, by the way. So we really lucked out on that one, but we really think about how do we invest in those communities, and that is part of integrating into what they're doing, right? So University of Washington was a great example. You know, we have like 6 or 7 home ports around the US that we lean into, and then we really look at where that concentration is. So we just formed a partnership last year and a half ago, with the Professional Pickleball Association. And so we're the official cruise line, the Professional Pickleball Association. So say that 3 times fast, by the way. It's like a tongue twister.
Well, that makes all the sense in the world, because the sport is hotter than hot. And it started particularly with, I think, older folks my age, you hear it become very, very popular. But now I'm hearing younger and younger. My youngest, who is 40, went to a party on Saturday night. The couples all went, and it was at a pickleball place. And he said, rather than just a party in some restaurant someplace, he said everyone was kidding about it, and then he said, we're all really looking forward to it.
We really, I mean, it's a great low impact sport. Any age can play it and play it together. We've put pickleball courts on all of our ships now, and
All
it's a
of you
big,
ships,
it's
wow.
huge. It actually started from the ship where people were asking. I think we had 1 pickleball court, and that's kind of how the whole, thinking started, and understanding that where guests are leaning from a sports perspective or activity level. So yes, we have gym and those kind of things, but how do we let people engage when they're on board the ship? And this was a huge opportunity. So not only where we'll have, title tournaments and things, will we show up and ask our guests to come, but also just in terms of what we do. And as pickleball sport expands, we're equally invested in that. So that's what makes it really exciting for us, as a way to continue to stay connected if we're synonymous with something that they're doing each day.
What's so special about cruising to Alaska? And by the way, I have people around me who've done it. I haven't, and they're telling me it was the trip of their life.
It is. I wish I could, if I could figure out how to describe Alaska, I would be the
Kacy,
most
you're this
successful
famous
marketer.
marketer. This is your job.
Well, I think, people say majestic, people say life-changing, people say bucket list, and there's something so special about Alaska. And I hate to use the word, it's the last frontier, but there's a lot of that. And, someone who loves to be outdoors a lot, it's really, it's so special, and it's something exciting to share. And so I think think back to what America, when you think about America, what it used to be, and where, the country, we're moving out west, and, it really is the pioneering days, and that spirit. And the people of Alaska are so incredible and unique. I mean, imagine what they do just for weather wise, but they all come together to support the cruise ships coming in. And there's something really unique about having the opportunity to interact with that, to interact with wildlife when it's truly wild. You're not just in a zoo or in a petting place. I mean, you are in a place where the wildlife is right there. And so I think we really try to craft the most unique experience. We try to give people an authentic Alaska. So what you would experience if you were to go there and stay for a month, we try to bottle up on the ship. And so we bring in, for example, we only serve Alaska seafood, which we'll talk about. We bring in experts who have incredible local stories, from the indigenous people to, for example, the woman who was a bush pilot and broke what we say, the ice ceiling for women in bush piloting. And we have just such neat stories that do that. And then we have partnered up deeply with Shorex. And so what makes Holland unique, I will say, is that with us, we are #1 in wildlife and wilderness tours. So if seeing wildlife, which is what we identified as important to our guests, you have the opportunity to see wildlife, a greater opportunity to see wildlife with us versus other cruise lines. And then also, same thing with glaciers. You are guaranteed to see glaciers with us, from the ship through Shorex, kayaking, helicopter. We have all the options. We really try to surround sound guests with the opportunity to see glaciers.
I have several friends who've made it a multi-generational family trip.
I love
And they
hearing
just
that.
said it was just magical for grandparents and grandchildren, and bonding at seeing something the first time together. So it might be the 10-year-old and the 70-year-old seeing it for the first time together. I've heard that from several friends, said it was just magical.
It's really, I mean, it is spectacular. And we actually have more calls to Glacier Bay, which is one of the most requested places to go. And so we also bring on a park ranger on board to be able to talk about that. And that's where you really see that multi-generational connection where the ranger is telling all about the history of the glacier and the park. And you see families together bonding besides taking pictures. Our guest really does love a lot of enrichment and education. So we try to look at opportunities to bring that on board and allow that sharing to happen.
I'm also hearing from my friends that it's amazing how your children and grandchildren want to spend time with you if you're paying for the vacation.
That's very true. I would say that is definitely a trend in our database and bookings as well. Very much so. The grandparent does it, but it's actually neat because then that's what I mentioned earlier. We see the parents now doing the same thing with their kids as they come on board. So it's really exciting for us.
But I heard from Jessica from our team, who you know, that do you have one excursion where you can both sail and travel on a train?
Yes, we have something called a cruise tour. So what we do in Alaska is two things. One is the cruises that you're aware of and probably familiar with, traditional Alaska cruises, different itineraries. The other one is called a cruise tour, where you have a cruise plus you do a land excursion deep into Denali in particular. So you'll take a train to get up to our own Holland Lodge that we have up there called McKinley Chalet. And we have a huge hotel with gourmet food, and you get to explore the park under the Tundra Wilderness Tour. And so you really get a land and I mean, you're going 8 hours into the interior of Alaska.
So then you stay over?
So we have a lodge called McKinley Chalet, and you will stay there and you spend the night from anywhere from 1 to 3 nights, and then come back and you'll either do the land tour first and then pick up a cruise back, or you'll do a cruise up and then do the interior and fly home.
Wow, that sounds really exciting.
It is. We're one of only two cruise lines that do that. So we really, really push. I mean, we've been honestly sailing to Alaska before it was even a state because of our history. So that's what makes us very invested in it, embedded in Alaska.
And when I think about Carnival and having those so many different brands, how does it benefit you in your job to be part of the Carnival organization? So when you're talking about doing these very creative things in Alaska, it sounds to me that that's purely with your Holland America hat on. But then when you might be doing something in another part of the world where you need clearance to get to a port, or you want to know what the best port, then you lean on your Carnival partners to get that intel.
Yeah, the marine operations and all the back end is very shared so that we are leaning on each other. And that is really what does bring that scale. It also, I think, brings great insights into what consumers are doing or wanting or desiring, and helps us on the marketing side be smarter marketers and do greater differentiation, right? And so I think that's where on the brand side and the commercial side is where we all really differentiate, but operating off a lot of, economies of scale from the back end and the operations.
That makes a lot of sense. So back to Alaska. I want to see a moose. Any chance I'll see a moose in Alaska?
There is a great chance you'll have a greater chance of seeing one with us, with Holland, than any other cruise line for sure.
I'm shocked. I'm shocked that you would say that.
Yeah, so we have lots of different shore excursions. So we call shore excursions that allow you through each different port to choose. There's, I don't know, 20, 30 options in each port that you go into. And so they're all geared around things that are really important to guests, which I mentioned are wildlife and glaciers. So there's ones where you can go to the Raptor Center. I think it's in Juneau. You can go whale watching, or Juneau's whale watching, and Ketchikan might be the Raptor Center. I'm maybe missing my ports, but the opportunity to also see bear. I mean, it's all out there with the shore excursions, as well as you could kayak to glaciers. You could hike on a glacier. You can helicopter to a glacier. So we really try to bring all of the glaciers and the wildlife forefront as much as possible, because we know that's what's most important to the Holland guest.
Now we know that those moose like to eat moose munch. Any chance we can tie this in here? Because at Harry and David, we have a great product called Moose Munch, and it's hugely popular.
Aware. Yes, I will say watch this space is what I'll say. Lots of opportunity there, and certainly we've been talking to Jessica quite a bit. So, watch this space for that.
And I love that you said earlier on that when you're in Alaska, it sounds to me like people who go there have a sensitivity and appreciation, maybe over-index in terms of their interest and appreciation for all things about nature, the outdoors, wildlife, and how Mother Nature knits them all together so wonderfully there in Alaska. And I bet they're very much more sensitive too about what they consume and their lifestyle, so that you use local fish, which there is always going to be wild. The difference between the health benefits and the taste characteristics of a line caught, naturally caught wild seafood product is just amazing. I've only learned that in the last couple of years that we've owned a brand that's all about fresh seafood and fresh food of all kinds and good and organic food. It's called Vital Choice. And I know we have a partnership with you around Vital Choice because the whole sense of if someone's had this wonderful experience, they've been to Alaska with Holland America, they've seen wildlife that they'll never forget, they've had a mind-changing exposure to nature, and now they come back and they want to eat better. And so we partner with you now at Vital Choice, where they can have a special arrangement with us where they can enjoy that good, healthy, one-of-a-kind seafood experience at home too. Is that something, has that evolved, that you have that sensitivity to really high quality food and really sophisticated preparations of good and natural line caught kind of seafood?
Very much. It's actually, there's quite a few great talking points in there for me to mention, which is, it really started with Alaska. And what we noticed was the majority of our dishes were seafood. And of course, we expected people to want that, but there was really a demand for local fresh seafood. So we partnered with a group called ASME, which represents all these commercial fishermen. And we actually we're the first and only cruise line to date to secure a responsible fisheries management called RFM certification. And the only people who have the certification are actually commercial fishermen. So as a cruise line, we looked at our chain of custody and worked with them to ensure that we could deliver on that. And that was something we made in time for season last year. And so you'll see even more this year. And so how do we are now on board, we do a seafood brunch, and things like that, where we get more of the Alaskan flavor. But it's also what we don't serve. So any species that is overfished, we also do not serve. So that's kind of our way of like identifying where we see opportunities. King crab has been really overfished, as you probably are aware. And so we won't serve that on board because we want to respect the region. And so there's a lot of like where we work with that. So it really started in Alaska. And from that demand, as we started doing that research around third-party data and stuff, we also noticed that one of the things that really influences booking is food and beverage. So our guests over-index in food and beverage more than any other cruise line that we're aware of.
I'm not surprised.
So we want to lean into that. Part of that is making that part of the cruising experience. It's not just table stakes for us. So seeing this big demand in seafood and looking at their lifestyle, our guests are going to seafood restaurants when they're home. They are buying, as part of the grocery, fresh fish. So in order to integrate with the lifestyle, we really need to make that a huge priority for us. And so working closely with the onboard team, we really said, how are we going to launch a fresh fish program? And at the same time, we had a new person join, Michael Stendenbach, who's been actually revisiting the entire supply chain to be more local and fresh. So coming out, the culmination of all this is a global fresh fish program where we bring over 80 species of fresh fish from port to plate in 48 hours. So once it's in the port, we're going to get it on your plate within 48 hours, and ports all around the world. So you're going to be eating local, fresh, and wherever possible, sustainable seafood on board with us. And that was like, I'm going to call it the magic of marketing, because it's a supply chain moment, but it's really a connection and a deep connection with what the guest wants and how they live when they're not on board, and bringing that on board. So it kind of does the full 360. And that's how we ended up with Vital Choice.
Everyone would think, or at least I would have thought a long time ago, that fishermen would just want to fish as much as they can, catch as many fish. But our team just came back from visiting our fishermen there in Alaska, up and down the coast. And there's nobody that is more concerned about preserving fish, because it's not only their income this year, but it's multi-generational, and they hope it continues to be multi-generational. So these are the real stewards working with the National Fish and Wildlife Administrations
Mhm,
to make sure that fish are not overfished, that they're not farm raised, that
mhm.
there's quotas on everything. And I was just blown away when the team came back and how impassioned they were about the passion that our fishing partners showed and evidence that live every day to make sure that their fish stocks remain strong. We saw evidence of that on the East Coast when lobsters were getting overfished. Everyone decided, hey, here's how we're going to do it. We're going to clip the lobster females. And now the lobster crop has come back so strong. And the same thing is
Mhm.
salmon and the wild whitefish that are all
Mhm.
come down the rivers in Alaska and spawn and then come back to the open oceans. It's wonderful to hear that you can balance those interests and do the best thing for the species and for those of us who want to enjoy them both for sport and for nourishment. So
Mhm.
it sounds to me like you guys are right in step with that and really not only in step but helping to make it so by being good customers of the people who do things the right way.
You summed it up really well. I mean, I think for us, it's so much about community, and we have been in Alaska for so long. We have a strong focus about how do we continue to embed ourselves in the community and meet those needs while also meeting our guest needs. And it is a group effort to do that. And I think what's been great is our team has been able to replicate that into so many ports around the world where we continue to do the same thing, which is how do we work with local fishermen or fisheries to be able to source fish that's fresh, but doesn't impact negatively things in the long run.
I'm a 45-year-old guy. I work in finance. I'm doing pretty well. I have two kids. I have one parent on my side and two parents on my wife's side. And we're talking about doing a vacation. Tell me, why should I think about Holland America and going to Alaska?
I think for a few reasons. One is you want to experience great service that we have and that makes us very unique when you're on board.
I get there and then I'm going to have a easy onboarding. I'm going to have
Yes,
a very
embarkation's going to be
relaxed
great, great
experience.
service. But I think what makes us unique, as I mentioned, is it's really that community, and we pull Alaska through every element of your experience. So it's the food for sure you're going to experience. It's entertainment. It's your shore excursions.
What kinds of entertainment would I expect on the boat?
Yeah, so in particular for us, we highlight local stories. So I mentioned earlier, we have one where it's the bush pilot who's breaking the ice ceiling. He'll come and tell stories like that. We'll have indigenous tribal folks come on board and tell a little bit of their history and their connection to
How
Alaska.
neat.
Yeah, we have an artist actually who did is a very famous Alaska artist who actually did this beautiful artwork, and his sister did the Alaska Airlines plane, and the brother actually did our artwork to show on board. So we really look for all those opportunities to exploit, and entertainment has a lot of that.
What's in season for you? What are the dates for my
Usually
Alaska
we start
cruises?
end of April, early May, and we run through the end of September.
How many people will cruise Alaska with you this season?
This season, well, we're always in the thousands, but we will have, I think 4 ships this year, 5 maybe. I'm trying to remember exactly. I think we usually
Wow.
between Seattle
I
and
just assumed it was one of
Vancouver.
your ships, four or five.
No,
That's terrific.
no, no. And so the ships are always repositioning, and each year we look at like which ships should go to Alaska and where we add capacity, and a lot of it is also influenced, and rightly so, by a larger how many cruise lines and how many ships are allowed in Alaska. So obviously with our
Oh,
history,
there are
we get a lot more.
limitations.
So we will see, a bunch of different cruise lines up there, but obviously we've been here for so long that we have a lot of opportunity for us.
And when I'm on board with my family, will I learn about the 150-year history of Holland America? I mean, you think of 150 years. You guys were sailing before the phone was invented, before automobiles.
I know.
You were in business through two world wars. You've cruised around and avoided hot spots around the world forever. I mean, the history of the company must be really, really amazing.
It is, and it's one as a marketer I'm so precious about because I really want to continue to see that. But we do have actually on entertainment we have a show called our origin story, and it talks about the roots of the brand and how we came along. and all through the different world wars and where we've been, and really going back to the days of Holland America out of Rotterdam. And so it's really exciting to see that. And there's obviously famous folks have come over, and ancestry and things. For me, what I think is really connective for guests is that it goes back to show the roots of our service. And I'll give an example of when we were really the cruise line for the transatlantic. So people actually coming to America, people would often get sick on those. So we started food meals and food service so that you would leave at certain times a day. Everybody would leave their cabin, and we could clean them and prevent disease and sickness while crossing the transatlantic. And I think that has such a deep root of service and how we think about things, and being not just innovative, but also servicing the guest, even in time, regardless of levels of cabin and things. So, for us, that really kind of goes back. And I think it's one of the unique things about our brand DNA that we continue to innovate on.
I'm personally excited about convincing my family, which won't take a lot, that we should go and have this experience as a family as well.
We would love to have y'all.
Something to have, I'd love to get sick of counting the eagles that my grandchildren when I saw. That would be
a great problem to have. Yes.
Wouldn't it be great? And of course, we'd love to see some moose while we're nibbling on some moose munch. That would be a nice, nice feature. And we already experienced the wonderful seafood from those Alaskan fisheries now, fishermen who out in line catch all that beautiful seafood. And I can't wait to have it on board too. So we love the partnership we're developing with you. We think you're one smart cookie. You're a creative marketer, and you're doing terrific things for the brand. And your outreach here has been greatly appreciated. And Jessica is telling me just this morning how excited she is about the plans you guys are cooking up on how we can really wow your guests and become a small part of your communities.
Well, it's total mutual admiration, and it's a massive team effort that we're doing. I think Vital Choice was such the great partner for us to think about how do we bring that same quality of seafood and fresh fish in particular to people's homes, and really integrating with their lifestyle. I'm excited for our additional partnerships, which I think we've hinted to here a bit, but it's really been so wonderful to have like-minded people and certain commitment to standards, which I really appreciate and respect with Vital Choice. They've got the same high standards that we do about our product. And so it was a perfect match for us and a crossover of our guests. And so I'm excited to see, what's next for us there.
Well, Kacy Cole, marketer extraordinaire, CMO of Holland America Cruise Lines.
So charming.
Nice to spend time with you today. And we look forward to cooking up some other fun things we can do together.
Jim, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to be here. And as I professed earlier, it's so wonderful to get to meet you in person as the godfather. I feel like direct to consumer. What a wonderful moment for me, and what great brands that I have the privilege to work for. So thank you so much for today.
You're just a sucker for 150-year-olds. Thanks, Kacy.
Thank you, Jim.